From B Media Production, this is B Podcasting. Engage your audience with podcasts.
Hi, and welcome to this first episode of Season 2. I'm Nick Schildberger. This season's going to be a little bit different to the first season because we're going to concentrate on case studies of podcasts that are quite successful, and we're going to talk to the people producing them about why they started producing them, how they produce them, and the results they're seeing now, having been podcasting for some time. In this first episode, we're going to look at how a large government-funded organisation is using podcasts to get its message out. But before that, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and podcast aficionado, Chris Ashmore.
G'day, Nick, and hello to everybody, and Happy New Year. Even though it's February, it's the first episode for the season, so I've got big wishes to everybody. Now, can I ask you, and it's been a while since Christmas, but did you get any Christmas presents?
Gosh, it seems like a long time ago. For me, Christmas is really all about the kids and what they got, so...
So the answer is no.
Not much. How about you?
I got nothing either, so I went out and bought my own Christmas present, and what I bought and what I've been wanting is a smart speaker. So I went out to JB Hi-Fi and got the cheapest one I could find, which was Google Home Mini, and I've got it in the studio today, and the reason I got it, of course, was to listen to B Podcasting and all my other favourite podcasts.
So since you've got it sitting here in front of us, can we give it a go?
We can give it a go, but I was so excited when I opened the package, got it out, set it all up with my Google Home. I was a bit disappointed because I couldn't get to play any podcasts. I hadn't read about how to do it. So this is what I did when I first opened it. I said, "Hey Google, play B Podcasting."
My apologies. I don't understand.
Well, you're an idiot. They call it a smart speaker. So then I realised and I read somewhere that you got to say the name of the podcast.
Did you Google how to do it?
I asked Google. I asked my smart speaker how to do it, and it still said it didn't understand. But no, I read somewhere that you got to say the name of the podcast and then podcast. So do you want to give that a go?
Oh, do you want me to do it? Okay. Hey Google, play B Podcasting podcast.
Sure. Resuming the audacity to podcast. How to launch and improve your podcast.
See?
How to recover from a
Hey
failed
Google,
podcast.
stop.
That wasn't our podcast.
Well, that's what happened to me. When I thought, okay, I'll say podcast at the end. Then I realised the official name of our podcast is not B Podcasting. It's B Podcasting, Engage Your Audience.
Aha.
So that'll work. So do you want to try that?
Okay, here we go. Hey Google, play B Podcasting, Engage Your Audience podcast.
From B Media Production, this is B Podcasting. Engage your audience with podcasts.
So there you go. It worked. Now it'll start playing the latest episode of any podcast that you ask it to. Okay, so unfortunately, it can't play specific podcast episodes. So if you give it the season number and the episode number or the title of that particular episode that you want to listen to, it can't do it unless it's the latest one. The only way you can get to listen to a specific podcast episode if you say, "Hey Google, play the previous episode."
So it's a smartish speaker for the moment.
It is.
But you've been listening at home to podcasts since you've had it?
A lot. It's so easy. Once you know which one you want to listen to and the latest, it's pretty seamless. But what it does, Google plays podcasts from Google Play or Spotify or TuneIn. So B Podcasting is on Spotify, and I would encourage anyone listening to this that you have your podcast on Spotify. It's relatively easy to do. It takes a few days for it to get on there. But the point is this: I think smart speakers are becoming a very important device for consumers of podcasts. And the more people listen to their smart speakers or use their smart speakers, the more podcasts they're going to listen to. So just a few stats here. 1 in 6 Americans owns a smart speaker now. And that's up 128% from the year before. And according to James Cridland's Pod News, 35% of those who own a smart speaker said listening to podcasts was the reason for wanting a smart speaker. 71% said they are listening to more audio since getting a smart speaker. And of those who listen to audio more, 23% said they are listening to podcasts more often. So it goes to show that, smart speakers are really becoming a staple for households.
I think Apple's about to launch theirs in Australia, but until they do, if your podcast is only in Apple Podcasts, it won't work on the Google Home, will it?
That's right. Exactly, yeah. So get it everywhere and just don't be tied up with the Apple infrastructure.
Now let's move on to our first case study for this season of Be Podcasting. Who did you speak to, Chris?
Well, Nick, our first guest for the year is Fiona Mackinnon. She's the Deputy Editor of Australian Prescriber journal. Now, it's a journal published for NPS MedicineWise, a government-funded organisation to educate people about choosing medicines. The Communications Department thought a podcast would help NPS MedicineWise's message to gain more exposure and to entice more traffic to their website, which it seems to have done and done really well. And as the podcast's producer, Fiona explains how her team puts it together and how they get the word out. But first, for some context, Fiona Mackinnon tells me about the good work of NPS MedicineWise.
They are basically funded to educate health professionals and also, the general public on how to use their medicines appropriately, to try and sort of avoid side effects and hospital admissions from maybe taking the wrong dose or the wrong drug. They also educate people about medical tests.
Now, you're, among other things, you're Deputy Editor of the Australian Prescriber magazine. Now, is this a magazine that's aimed at the broader community to get them to understand what medicines they are taking? Is that what the magazine's about?
Primarily, it's aimed at health professionals, so prescribers, so pharmacists, GPs, other specialists, trainee doctors, students, dentists, nurses, so anyone that's kind of dealing with patients and medicines. I mean, we are free on the internet, so anyone can read the article.
And what's the circulation like for the magazine itself?
So we publish every 2 months and we've got about 60,000 subscribers at the moment. We send them an email when we have an issue going out, with the contents, and they, a lot of them click through from that.
Recently you started the Australian Prescriber Podcast. Where did the idea come about for that and how did you get started?
We've basically got content coming out of our ears. And we've kind of got this dedicated mailing list of 60,000 subscribers. So for us, starting a podcast was a no-brainer because we were thinking, right, it'd be, another way to engage our readers. It builds on our brand and, hopefully will drive more people to our website. So I'm kind of a podcast addict ever since, Serial started. So I just love podcasts and I just think they're a great way of people getting their information, and they're becoming, it seems to me they're becoming increasingly popular way to consume information. And I'm not just talking about, entertainment, also like for news or education. So yeah, that was where the idea behind starting the podcast came from.
And the topics themselves, are they a reflection of the magazine? How do you choose the topics and the people who are on the podcasts? How do you find the hosts and the guests?
In terms of the talent to host the podcast, we have got a young doctor on our editorial committee, David Liu, who was really keen on the podcast idea, and he put up his hand to be a host. He found us another 2 hosts, so he found a GP and also a pharmacist that were, keen to do the interviewing. So in terms of topics, like you said, each episode, basically one of our hosts will interview an author of a recent article that we've published. So we kind of let the hosts decide, we'll give them a list of the contents that's coming up for the next issue, and we'll let them decide, what they're interested in and which authors they'd like to interview.
Well, you've been doing it for several months now, and since you started, what lessons have you learnt over the course of the podcast up until now, and what have been some of the challenges you've had to overcome?
Yeah, well, there's been plenty, and we've learnt the hard way. I think the hardest thing for us was doing the remote interviews. we've had a lot of technical problems. So, not all the authors are tech savvy, so it's hard when you're trying to set up the interview with them, getting the mics right. We've had issues with sound quality. Yeah, also we had to repeat one of our interviews because the author had a bad internet connection. So, lots of problems have arose, and we're feeling okay about it now. It's good to have a few episodes up our sleeve, though, just in case something doesn't work out.
If we can talk about your audience, do you know whether it's been measurable and what kind of audience is listening to it? Is it more than just what you have been targeting in the past, or has it broadened your market base?
We've been getting about 3,000 downloads per episode. So it's been ranking quite high in the science and medicines podcast category in Australia. So it's really kind of rewarding for us. And when we've sort of had an inkling that it's driving people to the website, because some of the more popular episodes, we've also had a lot of hits on the website for that particular article. So we had an episode on fibromyalgia, and then that started ranking in our top 5 articles, after the episode had come out. So I think it is kind of driving people to the website.
In terms of marketing of each episode, do you use a lot of social media? Do you tweet each episode or post the content on Facebook, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we tweet each episode. Yeah, we obviously send it out in our subscription email list. We have done extra marketing, like at conferences. We've made flyers. So there was a GP conference recently, and we made flyers for that.
How do you think it got onto New and Noteworthy on iTunes?
Well, I think our first episode, we basically sent it out to a wider mailing list of, I don't know, it could have been over 100,000. The guy who we interviewed for that podcast has got quite a high profile, Ken Harvey. So that first episode just got a massive amount of downloads. It sort of ranked like 18th in Australian podcasts overall there for sort of a few days.
Having a database of 100,000 members that you can send an email to highlight the podcast, I'm sure that would help quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that was a massive advantage for us, yeah.
Would it be fair to say that NPS MedicineWise is gaining greater awareness because of the podcast?
Yeah, definitely. Yep, I think there's definitely more brand awareness. So on our committee, we've got doctors, specialist pharmacists. They're saying that people are coming to them saying, I heard the last episode on, and they've been quite amazed that, how many people have been listening and that kind of feedback. I mean, the thing is with our audience, they're very busy people, and I think being able to do something else while they're listening, to a 10-minute podcast is a bonus for them, driving in the car or, at the gym.
Well, final question, Fiona. What advice would you give to other organisations looking to get into podcasting?
I think it's really important to have a dedicated team who are going to be prepared to, put in the work up front and overcome the problems that you might encounter. So there needs to be passion and tenacity there, I think, to get it off the ground.
That's Fiona Mackinnon, producer of Australian Prescriber Podcast.
It doesn't come as a surprise to us, Chris, that medical professionals and podcasts work quite well together, because we've been producing all sorts of audio content for a range of medical professionals because they listen in the car. They're busy, they're driving between appointments or between practices. And Fiona has said in this case it's worked for them as well.
Well, medical professionals are probably the most worked of all professions in the country. So, yeah, it makes sense for them to listen while they're doing something else, yeah.
They did well to get it into the New and Noteworthy. In fact, as we record this now, I think it's still there. She wasn't really sure herself how it happened. Do you have some insights?
Well, if you already have a database of tens of thousands or more, you've got that exposure already, and something new coming out of any membership organisation or any material that you're getting that highlights a podcast, you're going to be inquisitive and check it out. So Apple's going to see the analytics, going to see the algorithms stretch the numbers, and they're going to check it out. And if it's something new, Apple's looking for new podcasts all the time to promote on new and Noteworthy, so they're going to throw that up there.
Yeah, well, we're led to believe that you only need sort of a few hundred subscribers in a short period of time for that algorithm to jump up. So in this case, having, I think she said, over 100,000 people in the database to launch it to, you only need a very small percentage listening to probably spark the attention of Apple. But a little bit of self-promotion here, but we just launched a podcast that we'd produced with Karen Mason of Big Sis Australia. We launched it on the 30th of January, and then within a week, Apple have featured it in their banner on the very top of Apple Podcasts. And I don't think Karen will mind me saying she hasn't had thousands and thousands of downloads, but what she has done, which we know Apple likes, is she's got really good artwork, and it stands out, which we know Apple like. And she built up her PR and her marketing to that 30th of January launch day. So she has had a significant number in the first week, and Apple have clearly seen that. And bit of a pat on the back to everyone involved that it's featured in Apple Podcasts.
And justly deserved too. It's a great production, great content, and of course, well produced. Well done.
If you want to listen, head over to bigsisaustralia.com.
Well, before we finish, just one other thing about the Prescriber podcast. They do it in-house, but, it's still a big operation. They've got hosts of the program who have done podcasts before, but even still, they're using outside consultants to help with it. So it's still a big operation. If you can't do it in-house, of course, get some expert advice to do it and to do it well.
Well, that's it for this first episode of Season 2 of Be Podcasting. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do wherever you listen to podcasts, or try listening on Google Home or another smart speaker. And for more about us and how we can help you use audio to build engagement, go to be.com.au. From all of us at Be Media Production, thanks so much for listening.
Be Podcasting is produced by the team at Be Media Production. Managing Director Nick Schildberger, Executive Producer Heather Dawson, Producer Chris Ashmore, and I'm Peter Letts, Director of Audio. For more about us, go to be.com.au.